We are now 2 weeks before Pesach, Rosh Chodesh, Nisan. I want to say a few words about the Seder, about the Haggadah. And we all know that the core text of the Seder is taken from the book of Dvarim, Deuteronomy chapter 26, Arami Oved Havi. It's a recitation of 4 verses, and the 4 verses come in the traditional Haggadah with midrashim, with midrashic comments on the 4 verses. The choice of that particular section, of course, is interesting. It's not from the book of Exodus. It's the pilgrim's prayer who brings the first fruits to the temple, the recitation. And the first fruits are identified in the Torah with the holiday of Shavuot. Count the Omer between Pesach and Shavuot. It's not really a Passover text, but that's the text that the Mishnah has chosen for us for the Seder. Now, there's an interesting and difficult obligation we have, and the Haggadah speaks of B'chol dar v'dar chayav adam l'rot et atzmo ki hu yatsa miMitzrayim. In every generation, we see ourselves as if we personally left the land of Egypt. And what's interesting is that the text that has been chosen for us, the Pilgrim's Prayer, the Wandering Aramean, it begins with the recitation, Arami Oved Avi. My ancestor, my father, was a wandering Aramean. That's the plain meaning of the text. And he went down to Egypt. He dwelt there few in number. He became there a nation. In the second verse, Vayoreu otanu hamitzrim vayanunu. The Egyptians harmed us. They afflicted us. Vayinu aleinu avodah kasha. They placed upon us difficult labor. And suddenly, the language of the text switches from talking of the third person. My father was a wandering Aramean. Olaban the Aramean tried to destroy my father. That's the midrashic reading. And suddenly, in the second verse, Vayoreu otanu hamitzrim. The Egyptians harmed us. They placed upon us difficult labor. They afflicted us. We cried out to God in verse number 3. God took us out of Egypt. So the text that's been chosen for us is a text in which the speaker speaks personally, as if he or she had been there. We see ourselves as deeply connected to that event. We see ourselves as there. And it's very interesting that in the Haggadah, in the core text of the Haggadah, the focus is completely on the experience of leaving Mitzrayim, leaving Egypt. It's what took place in Egypt, and it's the leaving from Egypt. The mitzvah is a very difficult mitzvah, because the mitzvah involves putting yourself there. So, for example, if you are there, pretend you are there. You don't know what the future holds. We know the story. We know what happens afterwards. So on the night of Pesach, we see ourselves as there. We don't know what happens next. We're in the place of deep uncertainty, traveling out to the desert, traveling out to an uninhabited land, unpopulated land. That's how we have to see ourselves on the night of Passover. And at this time, a time of deep uncertainty, it's particularly important, I think, to see ourselves in the place of the other. To understand wherever we find ourselves, there are people in our communities, in our country, around the world, who are in very difficult situation. And the obligation of Passover, to see yourself there, to put yourself in the place of the other, was never more relevant than today. And part of seeing yourself in the place of the other is an understanding of responsibility to the other. These difficult times are opportunities for us to reach out, to try to figure out how we can contribute part of an effort, a communal effort, a global effort, to combat a disease that has taken a deep toll and that threatens us in so many ways. So this Pesach, we talk about leaving Mitzrayim, somehow separating from all those dark places. That's what Mitzrayim is. It gets us to reconsider and to appreciate the rabbinic obligation to see ourselves there. The experience of leaving Egypt, says the Haggadah, isn't a one-time historical event. It can happen many times in every generation, and especially in our generation. Chodesh Tov, Chag Kasher V'Sameach.